we started talking about UI. One thing that we did is we talked about the two different approaches to UI. So this is one place where Android is sort of different than what you guys might have experienced with Java, right? So what we do is we create some kind of XML file usually first, then we switch to Java. So it's usually this way, right? And it's usually that this is the first thing we do, and then this is the second thing we do. That's sort of the best practice. You don't have to do it this way, but that's a typical way it works, right? So in the context of that, we said, all right, so let's dig in. Let's start working on the XML file, right? So what we did yesterday is we created essentially equivalent of hello world. Like Yamba so far doesn't really do much, doesn't do anything, right? So what we did, the only file that we tackled is the layout. We changed its name from main to status, but that's hardly a work, right? So we started working on this, and as soon as this is loaded, I'm going to show you. It's interesting it's loading for 4.0. For 3.0. 3.0 is notoriously slow. I'm not sure if 4.0 is any faster. So this is our UI as of yesterday, right? So what we did is we said, all right, so we want to create an app that is going to have, it's going to be a stylus app. So I'm going to see some kind of text, right? I'm going to see a button, and then I'm going to see a big white box, right? It's basically the same design you saw yesterday running. The only thing is I flipped the button from bottom to top because I realized it's a much better user experience. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You don't have to use XML. I'll talk about what really happens behind the scenes, the magic. Yeah. We'll look into that. Good question. So, like I said, UI, it tends to be one of the things you spend the most energy in Android on. And it tends to be one thing that is usually confusing. This is, by the way, chapter 6 in the book, and it's it just basically exploded as a chapter. So it became, you know, it could be like a book on its own, just on Android UI, right? So we're just scratching the surface here. Now, best practice, the way I kind of see UI being done the easiest is to do it in iterations. So first thing I do is I just drop widgets onto the screen, right? That's what we did yesterday. We just dropped 3 things. And you can also see it here, right? Because you have, there's your linear layout, there's our piece of text, button, and editable text, right? So a couple of things that we introduced yesterday is we introduced this property here. Like this is what you guys did yesterday. You used these 2 buttons, right? Do you remember what they do? Yeah, so they specify the width and height, and they're either pressed or they're released, right? So it's binary. You get 2 options, right? Now, the options were fill parent, also known as match parent, and wrap content. So you're actually, if you look at the XML, you're going to get 3 options, but fill parent and match parent are one of the same. Okay, they just renamed it from fill parent to match parent for whatever reason in 2x version. And then wrap content just wraps the content. So that's what we did yesterday. Another thing that we did, so we said for this guy to be fill parent widthwise, right? But we said it should be wrap content height-wise, right? And for this guy, we said fill parent, take all the available space, right? Nothing you guys need to do for now, but just kind of want to show you a couple of things. So this guy, if I wanted to have it take all the available space, bam, bam, easy, right? Now, what if I wanted this guy to actually be bigger? So I could go here and press this button, right? What just happened? What just happened to my edit text? It's actually not overlapped, but it's right here. It's off of the screen. Okay? So what happens is the system goes like this. It says it goes to the top dog, which is our linear layout. It says linear layout. How much space do you need? Well, typically your top dog wants to take all the available real estate, right? That's the only way it makes sense usually. So it's usually this guy is fill parent, right? Bam, bam. So then it goes, linear layout goes to its children, one by one, and says, hey, child number 1, how much space do you need? Let's just talk horizontally, or vertically, right? So it says, how much space do you need? Piece of text. And piece of text says, I just want to wrap my own font, right? Content, which is this large font. And daddy says, fine, I'll give you that much real estate. So we chop off that from the entire real estate, right? So comes to the button, we come to the button and we say, button, how much space do you need? And now the button says, I want to get all the space from you, daddy, right? So it gets all the space, right? Now, by the time the youngest child comes along, youngest child is screwed. There's no more space left, right? It wasn't planned. It's kind of like, you know, it's just another proof that sucks being the youngest child, right? So especially if your siblings are, older siblings are greedy. So that's how this works. That's how the system is laying things up. For those of you who could use layouts in Java, it works exactly the same way, right? Just in Java, we it was a your panel would has a relationship to a layout as opposed to is a. That's the only difference, but everything else is the same. So so what I could do is I could you know, I could return this back, but then how would I? What if I wanted this button? What if I wanted these two buttons to actually be, these two elements to actually be the same height? You don't in this case, but just to kind of illustrate another point, what we could do is we could actually say, and I'm sure there's a button for that, but I usually do it, these kinds of things right from the properties, right? By the way, we talked about this. You guys have properties available to you here, right? If you don't, you can, whenever you're missing a window, right? Eclipse has a gazillion of them. Just go under Window, Show View, and then if it's not here, then go under Other, and then just find it. It's going to be under General. But in general, yes, there are a gazillion properties available to you. So it used to be in the past, the reason why I'm so used to this is that in the past we didn't have a button for that, right? These buttons didn't exist. So I actually had to do everything from here, right? And so these are gazillion properties. Like if you take a look at the button, right? I mean, check out how many properties you can change on a button, right? By the way, normally the next question is like, well, how do we know which property does what, right? Where's the documentation for this? I think the best documentation is actually Eclipse itself. So you can like put like, you know, your mouse over it and tells you tag, supply a tag for this view containing blah blah, right? Scroll X and so on. I mean, you can go to the official documentation, but it's not as intuitive as using Eclipse in this case. Right? So I think of it as the best documentation. So what I could do, so there's our layout width and layout height, right? Height and width. Okay. So now if I wanted to say fill match parent or fill parent, that's where my greedy button comes in. What you can change now is you can say there's a property called the weight, okay? And you can basically say change the weight of this, you know, how serious we are about this intention. So the weight is basically a number. It's a number between 0 and 1, so it's a little confusing. The way I usually explain it is, you know, 0 means don't care about anyone else, right? I want it and I want it now, like my daughter, right? And 1 would be yield to all the other siblings, right? So you're saying, daddy, daddy, I want all the space, but if anybody else wants some, I'll yield to them as well, right? So basically, if I put 1 here, then I have a button that now yielded too much, so it's gone. Because this guy, the third, so yielded to the third child, but the third child said, I want it all, right? So the fair game would be if both children yielded to each other. So now we have a perfect 50-50 split, right? They're both saying, daddy, we want all the space, but we're going to be, you know, we're mindful of others, right? So that's one approach that works well. And of course, you can play with these numbers. It doesn't have to be 0 and 1. It could be like 60-40% and so on, right? So if you want 40%, you put 0.6, right? It's going to reverse because 1 means fully yielding. So it's a little weird. Now, you may say to yourself, you know, forget about all this weight stuff, right? Like I can just go and for height, I mean, I don't have to use this match parent, fill parent, like these two options, right? You can actually use any number you want. You could go in here and you can say, I want this to be, and don't do this, please, 200 pixels, or like let's pick a bigger number. Let's do 300 pixels, right? So you can actually see it, 400 pixels, right? Now, what is the problem with this approach?
The size of the screens on the devices.
Yeah. So there are two problems. First of all, we're not acknowledging the density of a screen, right? How many pixels do you have per inch? What does it mean, px? Pixel actually makes no sense whatsoever anymore, right? In today's day, day and age that we live in, density of a screen is something that just keeps on changing like rapidly, right? So for example, most of your modern phones are 240 dpi. I think iPhone has 320, it's like extra dense. Your old school sort of Dev 1, HTC Dev 1 or G1 phone, they're like 160 dpi, right? And anything else you kind of see pixels at some point, right? So to fix the first problem, one better than px is to use something called dp. dp or dip, they're synonyms. You can use either one. Like you can use dip if that rolls off the tongue easier. Dip and dp basically specify density independent pixels. So what that means is that at 160 dpi, 1 px equals 1 dp. Right? So as you have a denser screen, the button is itself going to adjust how many pixels that works out to be consistent. Okay? So that's, you can basically safely forget pixels and switch to DPs from going forward. So if it's not so what's the full screen height in dips if it's not an issue of pixels anymore? That really depends on the device. So by the last count, we have I think 453 different devices on the market. So at 160 dpi, you have 1 pixel equals 1 dp. So if I have 240 dpi device, which is your standard nowadays, that means that I need 1.5 pixels for the equivalent dip, just because I got much more pixels available to me. It's a denser screen. So the system is going to adjust that automatically.
So the same number of dips on two different devices is essentially going to be the same.
It will be the same. Yeah. It will be the same actual in inches. It will be equivalent. Yeah. It will be equivalent in inches. So we're basically making up for the fact that some screens are have such big pixels and some are much more fine grained. Yeah.
It's basically not some very small fraction of an inch.
Yeah. Well, yeah. On a 160 dpi screen, it's exactly 1/160th of an inch, right? On this is 240, and iPhone it's 320, and so yeah. It just the guys in Korea or Asia are just packing way more pixels on the same screen, making it much sharper. So that's what's going on. Yeah. So like I said, this actually takes into account the fact that we are not going to have the different densities of the screen, but it's still not a very good practice to do it this way because of the it's not a UI that's going to adjust itself well for different devices and configurations and so forth. So you should really try to use one of those two, right? Fill parent or match parent and wrap content. Right? That's a better approach altogether.
Can you explain again what was the layout weight? How did you get
so layout weight. So how did I get what? Yeah. Yeah. So let me give you guys something. So like I said, you have gazillion properties here, and you could be overwhelmed. There's so many properties, right? Like which ones do I care about? So I kind of created this list, and this is just from my experience. These are the properties you care about, right? So, and by the way, this slide may be missing in the slide deck, so I'm gonna add it later. I'll copy it over. So I just forgot about the slide, so I added it this morning. So these two properties you universally care about. every single widget, every single view, always is going to have width and height. Right? It just must. Otherwise, it can't be drawn because we don't know how big it is, right? So that you must have. It's a law, right? You break it, your app won't work. These are sort of my commonly used things. So weight, like I said, how great your generous widget is. It's a number between 0 and 1. 1 means yield to everyone else. 0, which is the default, means don't care about anyone else. The other one that's kind of common is gravity. The problem, gravity is basically the Android lingo for alignment, right? The problem is that we got 2. So yesterday we cheated. We just kind of said, oh, I want this text to be in the middle. So we went here and we said, all right, let's just center it. And that worked, did the magic. Didn't really care what happened behind the scenes. What happened behind the scenes is we updated one of those gravities. So one gravity is the plain old gravity, and the other one is layout gravity. Well, they do a different thing. So basically, layout gravity is going to position the blue box within, it's going to center it within its parent. Let me use a different color. So this is its parent, right? Make sense? So that would work in this case. We'll put it in the center. The other gravity would actually position the text itself within the blue box itself. So centering text within the blue box wouldn't do much. Let me show you. So basically, if I let me do it like this. I can't. This tool is too smart, so I gotta kind of. So if we had this situation, right? So if I just did gravity, and I said gravity center, you can click on dot 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 and say center. All right, nothing happened. It actually did. It centered the text within the box. The problem is that the box is so small. It's like, okay, I'm in center, but not a lot of space to move, right? But in this case, if the box was bigger, so if this box was actually fill parent, then that gravity would have worked. Okay? If you don't care about any of this, it's like try one, and if it doesn't work, try the other. Right? But they do different things. One positions the content within the box, the other one positions the box within the parent. Right? So far, so good. So either way, as long as
we apply both width and height.
So yes, in this case, we said center, which would gonna apply both width and height. The problem, or not the problem, but the reason why it didn't do anything substantial width height-wise is because we had the wrap content. Right? So for example, if this guy actually did field parent, then it would have been in the middle. Right? If the parent was actually big, then centering it within the big parent, you would have seen the difference. Right? But we had this kind of situation where this is tiny, height-wise, it's just wrap content, and that's why it doesn't do much.
And those fields, that's left blank. I mean, is set to default, or is just like how that should be?
Yeah. So what happens with the fields that are set blank, right? What values do they have? I'll show you a tool later on. That's going to, well, I guess I can show you a tool right now. It doesn't really matter. There are a couple of tools that I'm going to be showing you as we keep on going. One of the tools is a tool called hierarchy viewer. Okay, you guys got it. It's part of your SDK. Everyone's got it. You just type hierarchy viewer. You gotta type the whole thing, right? Hierarchy viewer, right? This thing, and it fires up that tool. Well, why would you care about this tool? This tool was designed to help you optimize your UI, right? So for example, if I launch my app, at some point my app should start, hopefully. There it is. So if I now go and I say, where's my hierarchy viewer? I say, let's load the hierarchy for this particular UI. All right, so what this tool does is basically now loads the hierarchy of the current screen. My current screen is this screen, right? So what you can see is its hierarchy. So basically, I can move around. I can kind of see what the structure of my UI is, right? You can double click on various pieces if you want to see that view, right? So this is my entire screen, the phone screen, right? This would be that, but minus the top bar, right? This will be my piece of text. There's not much. This would be the title bar, and then this is where our stuff starts, right? Okay, and then you can kind of see that this is our linear layout, right? There's our large text, there's our button, and there's our area, right? You type hierarchy viewer on a command line. I'm assuming it's in your path. It's in your SDK. It's in the tools, SDK/tools, which you should put in a path, so then you can just type it anywhere. But otherwise, you can just double click, go open it up there. But it's part of the SDK. So this is just the piece of text. This is the the actual button and so on. So for example, if you wanted to see the properties of the button that we don't normally haven't set, the properties are right here. So let's see, layout, it's kind of small, so let me zoom in. But you can see that get baseline is 41, get height is 72, direction is inherit, width is 480, and bottom margin is this, left margin is that, blah blah blah. Measurements, the size are 72 by 480, and padding is 17, 16, 10, and so on and so on. Okay, so in other words, runtime is gonna set properties. So if you guys are doing something that needs to be pixel perfect, this is a good tool for that. Right, so if you don't set some property, the runtime will set it. At the end of the day, most of the things are set. Possibly all of the things, right? Then you can kind of see the UI here. Make sense? So this tool actually can work on any UI. So this is home screen, right? Home screen. It's a little more complex than our status activity. Let's take a look. Yeah, so in hierarchy view it shows you it says launcher, and then you say I want to open up that launcher thing. So the point of this tool is to help you optimize your UI, right? So first of all, you can look into it and you can kind of explain, try to figure out what's going on. As you can see, this UI is fairly complex. I mean, look at how much stuff there is, right? Right. So what the different dots mean, I looked at it at one point, and it's like one is memory, the other one is CPU, the third one is something else. It's not very intuitive, but they basically, green, green, green would be a good object, but red, red, red would be the worst object. And I forget exactly which dot means what. Yeah, but keep in mind that this is basically designed for optimizing the UI. In a nutshell, you want your UI to be flat, not deep, right? So notice how this structure is fairly flat, right? I mean, we don't have, for the number of objects we have, it's all sort of more or less, it's very wide, right? It's not very deep. Make sense?
What does the color mean?
The colors mean different things, and I forget. It's like memory, CPU, like time to draw, memory consumption is something else.
Green is good. Yellow is
Yeah. Green is good. Orange, yellow is so, and red is poor. So it gives you an idea how long what takes to draw, to render. So the system, you can help basically with that. But we got to this because we were talking about the properties that were set by the system, right? Yeah. That was our whole goal. So far, so good?
What are the top buttons, like invalid layout, request layout?
If you invalidate the layout, that causes it to redraw. So that's going to cause it to basically eventually have the system redraw it.
Request layout? Request layout.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that does. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Can you use it with the actual phone and the phone system to pull back?
Yeah, you can use it. You can use it with the actual phone as well. Yeah. So see if I plug it in. So if I go to hiearchyviewer, see it's finding devices. Hopefully my device responds. Let's see. You can actually, one of the things that you can do eventually when this comes up, let's see. For some reason it's not responding. Let me try this again. So if I view this, now it's just connecting to the emulator. Should work with the physical device. But one of the things you can do is you have the view where it's for pixel perfect graphics, so you can actually look into various pixels and get the RGB codes of those pixels. Still loading. Yeah, for some reason it's not responding. The device itself is not responding. Let me see what happens when I do ADB devices. It says it's there. Oh well. Yeah, there's a view, I believe it's this button or something, or inspect screenshot, and you can actually do a pixel perfect like introspection of the graphics on the screen at that point. Okay, so let's move on. So we were talking about so far about the common properties. I mentioned layout, width, and height. We talked about gravity and weight, right? The next one I would do is text, right? So we have our graphics currently looks like this. It's not very user-friendly. It says large text and so on. So we positioned everything the way we want it. Now we would go do a second iteration. We would actually adjust the text. So how do you think we would change the text? Okay, we could. I mean, we can do everything from XML. Yeah. So the XML looks like this, right? So where it's, there's the text, large text. Don't do this, but I could change it to something like status update. So, yeah. So that worked. Yeah, and that actually changed the text property here. So that will work. Let's get it straight. So that approach totally works. It's not a proper approach. Why? Can't change the what? Can't change the language. It's static. Yeah. So basically, the best approach to do with strings is to basically put strings, outsource strings into strings.xml file, and then to refer to them usually in this way. Okay. So you typically want to outsource your text to a text file, because this file, status XML, is in a layout directory. It's a layout. So as such, it's concerned about the layout. It's not concerned about the other stuff, like English, for instance, right? So what we would do is, the proper way would be to go to strings, to create a new string. So I'll probably click on A+, give it a key, something like status update, and give it a value. Right, so what I did is I created a new status update key value pairs. Right? So I open up strings XML and I click on this little button here, A+. So far so good on that. So now if I go back to this, the proper approach here would be to find a property called text, right? And as opposed to, so I select this, find a property called text, and say add string / status update. So the result is the same. But now I outsource the actual value of the text to another string. So if we have international version, it would automatically translate it, and so on and so on. If you're done with this one, you can do the button next, right? So you can click on the button. Now I'll show you the shortcut for this, because doing this in too fast, it could be a lot of work, right? Here's a shortcut. You can right-click on the button, say Edit Text, right? And this actually gives you a chooser to choose the text. These are the things that you have currently defined in your strings XML, right? Well, the one we want is not there for the button, right? So what you can do is you can say New String, and brings another dialog to quickly create a new string. Now it's a little confusing because first of all, it's very large, the dialog, and secondly, it's reversed, right? So the key is the second parameter, the value is the first. So you would say something like button update, and you may say update. Make sense? So the first one is your English, the second one is its name. No, I mean, yeah, if you want to provide a different one for Spanish, sure. But yeah, I would not worry about this at this point. So I would usually worry about all those alternative resources toward the end of the project. Because otherwise you just have to kind of like maintain, like, you want to add the button, you now have to think about all the 15 languages you're supporting, right? Like, oh, let me just get it right in English, and then at some point we're going to just go in and, translate the entire XML file. Or even better, just give it to somebody else to do it for us. Because we can. So, I click on OK. That now actually injected that string into strings XML file. Right? So now I can select it from here. And bam, there's my update. Right? So that actually added a value here to our strings XML. So in theory, you don't even need the strings XML to be open, because you can use that shortcut. I didn't. You don't want to modify the r.string. Oh, you're talking about what you put in that field. Right. So that's the key. So the key is whatever you want to put. I called mine button_update. Now, that brings a good point, actually. this key value pair list, right? It can explode really quickly, right? We don't even have any UI. We already have like 4 properties. So at some point, imagine you have a medium-sized app. You may have like 100 different pieces of text. So how are you going to name them so that you can find them? Because there's no namespace, right? Everything is flat. So that's where you can create your own sort of coding standards. Some people like to prefix it with what domain that it's in. So if this is a status domain, I'm working on status activity. I may do status underscore button underscore update, right? Something like that. So it really depends on your project and team. But keep in mind that this is a flat list. Can you reference multiple XML files? You can certainly you can have multiple XML files, yes, and you're gonna see the union of what you see as available strings is going to be the union of those strings. Yes, but when you say r.string or when you say @string /, then there's no namespace still. It's still, you may have it in my string, your string, Bobby's string, right, XML, but ultimately it's going to be string /. Because behind the scenes, this is just a file like this. See, it's a resource and then a bunch of strings. So this could live in a different file. It doesn't have to be strings XML. @string actually refers to the type of resource.
The text, I just made a string very large. Many characters. I'm trying to cut it off instead of going to the next line, and trying to use the layout with that sort of thing. It doesn't work out. You don't have to cut it off.
So your text is going, this text here?
Like upper one, or yeah, anyone doesn't.
So it goes into, keeps on going?
It goes into the next line.
So let's do the final one, which is the text area. Text area doesn't, you want to put some kind of text there to tell the user to type in a message, right? But if you type in text like we've done so far, then the user is going to have to delete the text first, right, before they can start typing. And that's extremely annoying, right? So there is a property called hint, right? Which is that gray out text. The moment you start typing into it, it just disappears. Make sense? So here's another shortcut, because I don't think hint you can get from here. Oh, okay, there is added hint. Okay, so you could do added hint here, or you can actually, in your properties, there's usually a ... thing. By the way, this never worked on Linux. So I don't know if they fixed it eventually, but this little ... doesn't normally work on Linux. But you can actually do that as well. So, select what you're working on. So, for example, I want to change the hint, ... I don't have my hint. I create a new string. So I say hint. I may say, please enter your status update. Click OK. There's my hint, and bam, that's what it is. I'm sorry? Oh, it's you click on it, you touch it, you start typing. So the hint disappears once you start typing. Once you select the box, once it gets in focus. No. No. Then you save the file, and then you can test it. See what happens. What's that? Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. This is kind of weird. It keeps losing the information. What do you change the hint size? It's going to be the size of the text that's in the box. So you would go into the text size property. It's going to be the same size as the text. Alright, so why is my device offline? It's really annoying. So let it launch.
That's our God. That's to choose a resource.
So you may have noticed that I had for text appearance here. That's how I made it large. For my first piece of text, I made it text appearance large. That's an attribute that somebody defined somewhere. Makes it easier. By the way, one of the helpful things in Eclipse is that if your code is not organized very well, you can format it. So you can basically go source, format, and see how that fixes everything to fit in a certain way. Very useful. You could change a background of things. So for example, if I wanted to make my button be blue, I can select it. I can go into properties. I can go into background, and I could actually type in the RGB code for blue, which is 00F, for example, right? Now I have one blue button, right? Not a very pretty button. Yeah. Why is that? It's smaller because the previous button actually used an image for the background, right? So that's partially why. Okay, so we're not going to do it for the button. Let's do, for example, for the big area. Oh, how do I now select my... I want to change the background of my background of the entire thing. How do I select it? Huh? What do I click? I mean, it's all... Like, I don't really have the place to click. I mean, it's kind of hard, right? Yes, that's why outline is very useful, because you can go here and select it. So you can select. That's why, you know, I have the outline, and I can then go properties, and I could change the background to, for example, pound 00F. So now I have a blue background. Not a pretty. I mean, don't judge me for my design skills, but it is a blue background, right? Now, what if I wanted to have this white box actually be somewhat translucent? So we can see our beautiful blue background. Yeah, so you can specify the alpha channel as well. So I can select this area, and if I say just pound FFF, then it's just white. But if I say alpha channel, like for example C FFF, right? So then it's white, but it's somewhat translucent. So that's why the blue is kind of coming through. What do you mean? Yeah, so those values are your standard RGB values. Standard sort of... Yeah. Yeah, you would look it up. I mean, it's just a code. Yeah. Yeah. So, well, if you pay more money, then yes, there is. I'm just
What's the color picker?
Yeah. It's not available in the free version. It's available in the premium version of Eclipse. So there is something called a we could actually define the background color. Look, we can do something like this. Look, we could define our own colors. So you could specify colors. There's a resource for that. So I could do something like this. Like I could go to my resources. I could click on plus, right, to create a new type of resource. Yes, just like we created. Did we create a new resource so far? Maybe not. Yeah. So again, you could do something like this. Go File, New, Android XML file. So you get that XML file editor, right? So in here, you could say, I want to create a file called, I don't know, colors, XML. Right? It's not a layout. It's going to be a color list. I think it's a color.
Drawable.
No, drawable is going to be for images. Could be values. No. Oh, I guess maybe. Maybe. Let's try that. Let me try. I normally don't use drawables. I usually use values and then color. But let's see. So drawable, colors XML, and then color. Okay. See, this is when you get this, it doesn't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm not sure I want to do that. Let me undo. Or I can add. Let me see if it's actually smart enough. So if you right-click on it, you can say Open with. Color editor. Let's see. Well, that doesn't really do much. It doesn't know anything about anything. So let me do it like this. I'm going to create a new values. A resource, colors, XML. And see here I can add now a color. And I can give it a name value. So I can say my blue.
So how did you get to that one?
So what I did is I created a new values resource. So I selected resource or values, doesn't really matter, right? Values. Click on the little A plus or go File, New, Android XML file. Okay. So here I chose values and I specified file name colors XML. So those are the two things, values and colors XML. Right? So far so good. So click on edit, that creates a new file. It's usually a blank file. You then say add, and then it gives you a list of things you could be adding. So far we only saw strings, right? But you can add a new color. Right? And then a color, it tells you here, value specified as an RGB, blah, blah, blah. You can do a RGB if you have a alpha channel. So this is your standard red, green, and blue, right? Plus the alpha channel. So my blue may be something like C00F, right?
So you could have editing the string XML.
You could edit it in strings XML, but then that would be a string. In this case, it's an element called color. So if you notice on the resources, it knows that this is an element called color.
Get the hash.
Yeah, thanks for pointing this out. Yeah. Why doesn't it allow me? I can't add the cache. There. So far so good?
So then you would say add colors / my blue, and you can specify anywhere in the...
Yeah, so now if I go back to my status, as opposed to hard coding that color blue, so let me make this guy be... So if I specify this, as opposed to hard coding the value here, just like with strings, you want to outsource this to another file. So I could actually outsource it to color, my blue, right? So this guy is concerned with layout, not with color. So I outsource the actual value of the color to another place, a place called color, which happens to be in a values colors.xml. Yeah, so it's not a type. It's the file name itself is not important. What's important is this, the type of a resource it is. Yeah. Same with strings. You say add string, although it happens to live in a file called strings.xml. It's not important. So far so good. Okay, so you guys can play with some of this cosmetic stuff. We're going to talk about images a little bit, but then we're going to quickly switch to Java. So that's the plan, basically. Right? So this is sort of like, you know, you can keep on going and exploring XML, but you saw the main sort of properties. There's obviously a gazillion other ones, which are, you know, whichever ones you're interested in, you can probably extrapolate at this point a lot of these things. Sounds good? Cool, so let's do, it's 10:30, let's do a short break, and then we're going to continue with images, and then we're going to do the Java.